love hearing the sound of the water out there, the pond.
Ah.
It's very nice when it's so quiet.
Yes, we have sound effects that you may not be able to hear.
Yes.
The clock that chimes once in a while, and a koi pond that has a fountain so the water is flowing. So, yeah. Hey.
You changed.
I changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look vibrant.
Anything new and exciting?
It's the holidays. It's reminiscent of our first few sessions.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Anyway, Merry Christmas. By the time this is released to the public, it will be either right before or soon after Christmas. So here we go.
Joyful time of year, for sure.
Session number 74.
It's hard to believe.
Hard to believe, is right. Mm-hmm. Let's dive right in. We are finished after 3 sessions with letter number 111. A lot of good information in that letter, and we've got more good information coming up. These get more and more exciting all the time. I want to cover a few things, just kind of incidentals, a little bit of housekeeping. We talk a lot about probational chelas and accepted chelas. And recently, KH was complaining that one of their biggest problems is trying to deal with the chelas on probation and the lay chelas.
Synonymous, lay chela and probationary chela?
More or less.
Okay.
He actually went out of his way, way out of his way, to try to accommodate the Englishmen. Because of this special operation and experiment to try to see if they couldn't get some chelas among the Europeans. Mm-hmm. So far, it has been a dismal failure.
It was a noble effort, obviously, but...
Only HPB, she's the only one so far that has made any notable progress. Alcott is making progress, but as we learned recently, he still doesn't understand what it really is to be a chela. But he's hyper-focused on his project, his pet project of reviving Buddhism, and they're all in favor of that. Buddhism in Asia, and especially in India, had sunk to a new low in the 1880s, partly because of the Europeans that had colonized almost every country in Asia.
And pushing Christianity, probably.
Yes, exactly, and denigrating their own religions, including Buddhism.
Does Alcott identify as a Buddhist practitioner?
Oh, yes. At one point, early in their operations in India, they were in Sri Lanka, and they both took Pansil, which is the ceremony by which one becomes a Buddhist. There are certain precepts that you agree to obey and to follow the teachings of the Buddha. And yes, they did do that. So technically they are Buddhists. You and I haven't ever taken the trouble to do that, but we still follow the same precepts. I don't know if that's going to make a difference or not, but I hope not. Now, chelas on probation and accepted chelas. So KH was saying that the chelas on probation caused a lot of difficulties for him and for Moria also, because they were the two that were trying to work on this project. The problem with the Englishmen was that they were 100% convinced that they were superior to the Mahatmas. They just happened to know a little bit more about certain esoteric things. But in all other ways, we are by far the superior race. Give us the teachings, we will adapt them to our way of doing things, everything will be fine. And they're like, no, dudes, that isn't how it works. We know way more than you think we do. So it was a problem. And even their Asian chelas, remember the problem with Babaji, who had to borrow money because he wasn't careful with the money that had been given him to make a trip and to go visit Sinnett.
KH had to bail him out.
Yes, and he was highly embarrassed because they weren't acting like very responsible adults. So, yeah, they have lots of problems with both Asian chelas and with their European chelas. Now, chelas that are accepted are different. They have taken a vow, for one thing. They have to have reached a point where they are 100% convinced that the Mahatmas are who they claim to be, and they have to have enough experience and insight to realize that karma absolutely works. There is no need to ever lie about anything or to manipulate things to try to gain personal goals. None of that. They are 100% certain that the Mahatmas know what they're talking about. And for that reason, everything falls into place. HPB is 100% convinced. The slightest hint, and she's on it. She's like, I'll do it. And the others are like, well, I don't think that's a very good idea. Or they just go off and do their own thing. And she's hyper-focused. Damodar was hyper-focused. Anything that they mentioned, he was willing to do it to the point of denying himself any pleasures personally.
It's an interesting requirement, though, being 100% certain. I'm contemplating that. As far as I can tell right now, I'm 100% convinced. I don't have doubt. It's almost frustrating to hear that some of these probationary chelas had doubt.
That is because they haven't sounded the teachings. They haven't applied them. They haven't put them into practice. And more importantly, they have done nothing whatsoever in the way of Raja Yoga.
To make a comparison, when I first encountered these teachings and you, looking back at a number of years, it's been almost 20 years, I think 18 maybe or something. Mm-hmm. I guess that's longer than they've had, maybe.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't have doubt. It's odd that they have some doubt. That's interesting.
And we have the benefit of 150 years of the teachings being available. So we have to take that into
Wouldn't
account.
it stand to reason that the Englishmen have done this in past lives, though?
Yes, absolutely. They did the foundation work in previous lives. So you are right in that KH probably was entitled to believe that they might be ready to make that leap. It is quite a leap. But obviously, at this point, they aren't ready.
They're encountering it later in their lives, that life.
They have social obligations. They have family obligations. Yes, and that complicates things. Even some of their Asian chelas who were accepted were married, but this came first, and their wives and their families realized that this was of primary importance. And with the Europeans, that's not going to be so understandable by family members. Now, you had an assignment 2 sessions ago. What was that?
It was to investigate a little bit in mainstream science. Have there been actual tests completed or tests run and evidence gained of the efficacy of healing prayers for healing or meditation for healing? Any documentable, reproducible methods to heal through prayer? So we did a little research, not too much, but...
And what is the definite conclusion?
Inconclusive.
Inconclusive. Imagine that.
There's some evidence that it works. We aren't sure if it's placebo. It's hard to reproduce. There are too many unknowns. In that realm of study, our mainstream science is in its infancy. It's hard to conduct real experiments based on the scientific method when science doesn't understand it, how it works.
Yeah, you can't help but involve people who are not scientific by nature, because mostly those are the ones who have prayer groups. I'll just tell you a little bit my own experience. I belonged to a prayer group many years ago that was a theosophical healing group. And we met every week and had a prayer healing session, meditation, and we had a list of names that we were meditating for and sending healing. I never received any confirmation whatsoever that anyone was specifically helped by that. In my own experience, I grew up in a church that has temples that have a healing ceremony. And anyone who goes to that temple can put a name into this bag, and then they do this prayer thing over this bag of names. And I've never seen anything conclusive out of that either.
There are lots of those in modern day. My mom loves doing that for birthdays and for special days. She'll submit Hope's name and my name, and it will be prayed for at the church, and our names will show up in the program. Is it called a program? For that day. Yeah, churches still do that.
And here's one more thing that we'll throw out there. The state of Utah has a very, very large Mormon population, and most of their doctors, or a large percentage of their doctors, are Mormons, and they often invite the people that they are treating to be prayed for in the hospital when they are in need of surgery. But there have been tests to determine whether or not that produced results. And the results are that the people in Utah, in these hospitals, who are treated by doctors quite often who are very devout Mormons, they have the same rate of death, they have the same rate of problems as any other group of people. So maybe it's because they don't have the power, I don't know. But you're right. So the point is, unless you have achieved a certain power, which Olcott had, and which Sinnett was hoping to develop, to create that energy that actually goes from you to that person and makes a difference, nothing is going to happen. Appealing to a being in the sky somewhere who may or may not be imaginary doesn't make it happen.
Right. Please don't think that we're saying this doesn't work. It's the method, it's the way we do it, which creates an effect or not. We are not suggesting to ask an entity to do it for us. We're not pleading for help. There is a very distinct method to send good healing energy, prana, if you will, to someone in need. And an influx of prana, which is life energy, how can that not assist in the regeneration of cells, the increasing of someone's mental state, for example? But we're not asking for help. We are creating the conditions in us and then mentally projecting it through metaphysical means to the recipient. It is very possible.
So it's a type of Kriya Yoga. You have to create it. You have to make it happen. It's not pleading. And KH was talking about that several times in different ways. But
how did we come up with the idea for that? How was this brought up in our... I don't remember how.
It was because Sinnett wanted to know if he could do healing the same way that Olcott did.
Okay.
But the very first qualification is you have to have excess energy yourself. Mm-hmm. Most people have a certain amount of energy and they waste it all day long. If that energy can be conserved and focused, there are probably lots of people who could use their energy to help people. But it's so scattered and their knowledge and their ability is so lacking that they simply don't know how to do that.
This concept is fascinating to me, particularly. This is basically what the Hatha Yoga tradition is mostly about. It's about learning to build and conserve this life force energy so we can be healthy, heal ourselves, have our bodies mobile and strong, but it also immunizes us against disease. It creates clarity when we have more energy flowing healthfully in the body, like rivers of energy instead of being dammed up and stagnant or dry energy. And then once we are able to build it, there are many ways, through breathing techniques, through movements, through nature, receiving it from nature, intentions. There are even some sort of more esoteric methods, retention of bodily fluids. You can take that down whichever direction you'd like to go with it, but there's discussion about that in some of the ancient texts. And those are all methods to conserve and build our energy so then we can use it for something. We can use it for healing, use it for creating other things in the world.
And you know who knows more about this than anyone else? The Mahatmas.
Of course.
They're the epitome of this. They have put it into practice. They have proved for themselves how to do it. But guess what? They don't spend their whole day healing people for one reason. What is that?
Well, karma. They would interfere with their people, the karma of people.
Yeah, we muddle along and we try to interfere with people's karma by helping them. And usually all we do is delay their own progress in many different ways. But healing would be one of them. If somebody has an illness that they're dealing with, there's a lesson to be learned. There is a reason that they are dealing with that illness. Let them figure it out. Instead, we come in, let me fix that for you.
We've heard countless times through our sessions that the Mahatmas will use their powers. Of course they will, when they deem it necessary. All the stories of Jesus performing healings, that's an example of using powers when necessary to heal. It's possible.
So they know when it's karma and when it's not karma. We don't. That's a problem. So basically, the accepted Chelas have understood principles like that, and they try as much as possible not to interfere with other people's karma. And another thing they don't do is to waste their energy helping people achieve selfish goals. Doesn't matter whether it's in their personal life, whether it's in their theosophical life or anywhere else. Guess what? There are lots of people everywhere, in work, in your family, in your organizations, that have personal agendas. This is my pet project and this is what I want. Hey, can you donate some money to this? They don't get involved in that stuff, especially if they're convinced that it's not 100% unselfish. And very few projects are 100% unselfish. So again, unless you have a good degree of discernment, you're going to be muddling along. You won't know which of these is the case, whether someone is being selfishly motivated or 100% unselfish. Get your discernment. Learn that first. Now, let's get going on this next letter, number 112. This was received at the same time as letter number 111. The other letter, KH, mentioned here, could have been, and we assume that he did share it with the members of the TS in London. And this is about personal information. That's the reason he sent two letters at the same time. 111 to be shared, and as we'll find out, this was for Sinnett personally. This was received about July 1883, approximately 3 months after Sinnett had been in London. So go ahead with this.
Okay, letter number 112. Private, but not very confidential.
He's being funny. I'm not quite sure what he means. I guess he could share it with people who are in the know, but not the members in general.
I left for a separate private letter, in case you want to read the other one to your British members, any reference to the proposed new journal. I didn't realize how deep my poor people had sunk until I began to watch the development of this effort to erect a protective shield for Indian interests.
This is a little bit sad. One of his pet projects has been to raise the Indian people back to their level of spirituality that they had had in the past. But he's realizing that they have sunk far lower than he ever imagined.
As one who watches the signs of fluttering life beside the bed of a dying person and counts the feeble breaths to see if there may still be room for hope, we Aryan exiles in our snowy retreat have been watching this issue.
And he's talking about the newspaper here because that was the primary subject of this letter.
Forbidden to use any abnormal powers that might interfere with the nation's karma, but still trying to stimulate the zeal of those who care about our efforts through all permitted means, we have seen weeks grow into months without the object being achieved. Success is nearer than ever before, yet still in doubt.
So they've been several months working on trying to get enough participation by investors, people who, in India or anywhere, who have money who would help get this newspaper started that would serve the interests of the Indian people as opposed to the British people.
The letter of Gindan Lal, which I shall ask Upasika to send you, shows that there is progress. In a few days, a meeting of native capitalists will be held at Madras, which Mr. Alcott will attend and from which there may be results.
So all of the leaders in the TS had been working hard to try to get funds for this newspaper because the Mahatmas were hopeful that this would succeed. So Alcott, HPB, Subbarao, others were doing everything possible to promote this idea of donating to something that would help the native people.
He will also see the Gaikwar at Baroda and Holkar at Indore, and do his best, as he has already at Bihar and in Bengal. There was never a time when the help of a man like yourself was more needed by India. We foresaw it, as you know, and patriotically tried to make your way easy for a speedy return. But, alas, it must be confessed that the word patriotism now has scarcely any power over the Indian heart. The, quote, cradle land of arts and creeds swarms with unhappy beings precariously provided for and vexed by demagogues who have everything to gain by trickery and arrogance. We knew all this in general, but not one of us Aryans had tested the depths of the Indian question as we have of late. If we may symbolize subjective things by objective phenomena, I should say that, to the psychic sight, India seems to be covered with a stifling gray fog, the odic emanation from her vicious social state. Here and there twinkles a point of light which marks a nature still somewhat spiritual, a person who aspires and struggles toward the higher knowledge. If the beacon of Aryan occultism is ever to be kindled again, these scattered sparks must be combined to make it a flame, and this is the task of the TS, this pleasant part of its work, in which we would so gladly assist if we were not impeded and rebuffed by the would-be Chelas themselves. Oh my gosh.
Now, we might be forgiven if we question the motive of the Mahatmas in trying to save their own people from darkness. Why wouldn't they leave them alone to learn their own lessons in their own way and in the amount of time that it may take them? Are they not practicing vairagya? Are they not practicing letting everyone learn at their own rate? I don't know. They have more insight than I do, and so I would be inclined to help them, like Sinnett is inclined to help them right now. I would absolutely help them. So they may have motives that we don't understand and that would help everybody.
Also, remember what the Mahatmas' work normally is on a regular day-to-day basis. They are sending assistance to the whole world in various ways, mentally, but not specifically like removing an obstacle physically from a country or from a person's path, giving them maybe the opportunity to see something in a better way if the person's open to it. That's the kind of help, but they do give that type of help always. So maybe that's what he's talking about, maybe just more of that.
Maybe. There's one more thing that we have to take into account. The Mahatmas, too, are on probation.
Okay, that's true. Okay.
They are Chelas on probation. They are always working towards the next highest step. What was it KH has said several times? I'm not yet a full Mahatma.
He has said that, yeah.
And so he, at that time, 1883, was still not a Chohan. He was not the next level of adept. So he was working towards that, and apparently he was even working way beyond that on the level of bodhisattva. Remember, that was the purpose, according to HPB, for the samadhi that he was in for 87 days.
That's a long time. Wow.
So, yes, they are still learning, and that tells me that they, like their own chelas, are left to learn on their own to a very large extent. So even though they are taught principles, they still have to prove it to themselves. They have to experience all of that and figure it out. Both their lower mind and their higher mind have to sort things out and be convinced that that is the truth. That is how things work.
They're working too. They're on a path also.
Yes,
I
they
love
are.
that. They're
It never stops.
Yeah. I stepped outside our usual limits to aid your particular project from a conviction of its necessity and its potential usefulness. Having begun, I shall continue until the result is known. But in this uncongenial experience of meddling in a business affair, I have ventured within the very breath of the world's furnace and have suffered so much from the realization from seeing at close range the moral and spiritual condition of my people, been so shocked by this closer view of the selfish baseness of human nature at this stage of the evolutionary cycle, and have seen so distinctly that it cannot be helped, that I shall henceforth abstain from any repetition of the unbearable experiment. If your paper doesn't succeed, it will be due exclusively to your unfortunate letter on the 17th, published in the London Times, in which case I shall have nothing more to do with the financial side of these worldly affairs, but confine myself to our primary duty of gaining knowledge and disseminating through all available channels such fragments as mankind in general is ready to comprehend. If it does succeed, I will, of course, be interested in your journalistic career here if I am able to overcome the bitter feelings you have awakened in those who confided in you most by that unfortunate and untimely confession, honest as its object may have been, and you may always depend on my practical sympathy, but great judgment must preside in your accounting office as well as in the editor's office.
And he's referring here to the fact that Sinnett, who wasn't being very diplomatic, was affecting his financial ability to create this. He says you have to be just as clever in your accounting as you are in your editing.
The great pain you have inflicted upon me makes it clear that either I understand nothing about the fitness of political duties, and therefore could hardly hope to be a wise business and political advisor, or the man whom I regard as a true friend, however honest and willing, will never rise above English prejudices and the sinful antipathy towards our race and color. Madame Blavatsky will tell you more.
And she did. We fortunately have her letter. So what was this unfortunate letter? Sinnett, being back in London, was being hailed by the Londoners, both theosophists and the society people in general, for his erudition and his wild experiences while he was in India, and he was reveling in that. all of the attention that he was receiving from all corners. He, being part of English society and London society specifically, felt the need to show how much he knew and wrote a long letter to the London Times, which they gladly published. But in it, he was extolling the virtues of the English people and how much they were helping India, and deviating completely from the task which the Mahatmas had, was to help the lower people, not the people who have lots of money, not the people who have lots of power, but the everyday working people in India. That's who they love and care about. Obviously, they care about the others also, but they can take care of themselves. The poor people can't. So he was very distressed that Sinnett had done so much to prop up the society people in England and say, oh, this is a great project. We'll see. In fact, let's take a look at what HPB said in her letter to him a few weeks later when he received it. And I'll have Paul read. This is again from the book, The Letters of H.P. Blavatsky to A.P. Sinnett. And this is letter number 25. She wrote it in August of 1883 from a place called Uttakamand. And it was kind of a retreat area, a cooler area near Madras that people would go to get out of the heat. In August, it was extremely hot. So she was up there at the time, and she wrote a long letter to Sinnett about this unfortunate letter to the editor of the London Times. I'll have Paul read just a few excerpts from it, from here to here.
Okay. Now all you say of Hindus, I know it and vastly more. No one knows better than I do their suspiciousness. That's a funny suspicion?
Yeah.
Suspiciousness. Okay.
But remember that HPB, this wasn't her first language.
Right.
And she still struggled sometimes with English words.
Their suspiciousness caused by centuries of slavery. Oh, the Hindus were slaves?
Well, yes, and serfs, and they were subject to rulers.
Oh.
And we'll find out another group of people that
Okay.
they were subject to.
Okay. Their cunning, often from the same cause, and their ingratitude to foreigners only, because there is no more grateful people on the face of the earth when they feel sure of a person. But I cannot blame them, for I pity them too much to do so.
And she's very much like K.H. She has extreme concern and pity for the poor people.
It was not from the masses, though, that we expected money, but from the oppressors of the masses and the poor. From Zamindars and Rajas, and these brutes wanted only a pretext.
Yeah. We're going to find out that there was a bill introduced in the parliament concerning the operations in India. And it was supposedly to lift up the poor people, but as you might imagine, there was lots of intrigue, and different parties had different things planted in this bill that actually worked in a different way. So there's a lot of stuff going on politically, diplomatically. Each faction has its own agenda and its own goals to achieve, and the Mahatmas have their own way of looking at it.
So Durbanga, who solemnly promised 25,000 to Alcott,
And that would be about $340,000 in today's money.
and Colonel Massey, his manager, with whom Alcott stopped at the city of Durbanga, was the first to back out when your letter appeared.
So some of these Rajas And rich people in India are now starting to back out because of this letter. Yeah, it had consequences.
And after him, the Gaikwar, so there was 50,000 lost.
Yeah, so 50,000 rupees would be equal to $680,000. And so between these two, there was more than $1 million in today's money that they were ready to invest. And now they're like, well, after you wrote that letter, we're not so sure.
Wow. And then the Rajas of Vijayanagram and Venkatagiri followed suit, and they were ready with the money. Gosh.
Yeah, that letter had a big impact, negative.
With them, it was a pretext. But it is just what I feared. And it came to pass. You say you lost money, my dear Mr. Sinnett. We lost enough of it too. And to us, 1 rupee is more than 100 for you. But neither what you or we lost, or rather spent, in sending agents to all parts of India, even Subbarao spent a few hundred, and Judge Mutta Swami, and a few others who were determined to serve the Mahatmas. All of us, we shall lose 1,000 times more if the last and supreme attempt of K.H. fails. For we are sure to lose him in such a case. Never shall he show his face nor communicate with any of us, as he had very little, if anything, to do with us before that year at Shimla. So will he relapse once more into unknowingness and obscurity. You do not know how he feels. I do.
She was quite upset. K.H. was quite upset. The money is evaporating right before their eyes. And Sinnett wasn't very astute. He wasn't practicing discernment at all. So now what? It's quite a mess. But remember, she said, we're going to lose him. And what was it that K.H. said a while back? And it was about the very same thing, about this project of trying to start the Phoenix newspaper. Yes, I have worry and annoyance indeed. But then it was to be expected, and no fish undertaking a ramble on the river's bank outside its own element need complain of lower back pain. We are near the end now, one way or the other, and once I take my leap back into the crystal wave, few will ever have a chance of seeing me peep out again. And in fact, that did happen to a large extent, not immediately, but within a relatively short time, K.H. stepped back. Moria took over part of the operation, and K.H. had less and less to do with the English people. All right, let's continue with this letter.
I will say a few more words about Mr. Massey's difficulty regarding the letter from our brother. Is that Hume?
No, he just put H at a line, but it's one of the adepts. His name is Hilarion.
Oh.
And he was from Greece, apparently, and is often referred to as the European brother, a European brother.
Is this the first time he's referred to him as H?
In the Mahatma Letters to Sinnett, he has in other letters referred to him, yes.
In Scotland at the time, sent to him circuitously through Ski. Oh, I remember him. Okay.
And now remember, in a different letter, he mentioned that they have a brother in Scotland.
Yeah.
And so apparently Hilarion was visiting that adept in Scotland.
Oh, I thought Hilarion was the brother in Scotland.
No. Hilarion is the Greek brother.
In Greece. Oh, okay.
And he was visiting the brother in Scotland.
Okay. We don't have the name of the Scot.
No, I've never seen any name for him.
Okay. Be just and charitable, at least to a European.
Meaning Hilarion.
If Mr. Massey had, quote, declared to the English spiritualists that he was in communication with the brothers by occult means, he would have spoken the simple truth, for not just once, but twice, he had such an occult relationship, once with his father's glove sent to him by Moria through ski, and again with the note in question for the delivery of which the same practical agency was employed, though without an equal expenditure of power.
And again, they are trying to help Mr. Massey, who is apparently dense as can be, and just continually sees things in the wrong light and makes judgments that are completely incorrect. Let's see what he was referring to about the glove. This happened when HPB and Alcott were on their way to India and stopped off in London for 2 weeks. And Mr. Massey was there. Now, remember, they both had met him before because he was there at the founding of the Theosophical Society in New York in 1875. So they knew him well. And while they were there, the second time in 1879, Mr. Massey asked HPB if she could help with a problem that his father was having with his eyes. He was having some severe health problems that involved his eyes. And so she said to give her something that belonged to his father. He got a pair of gloves and gave them to her, and she took them with her to India. Now, this would have been in January of 1879. On the 17th of February, having been advised by a lady medium to be at home on the 17th, Mr. Massey, the son, waited in a darkened room, and presently a soft packet was flung in his face. And it was a glove. One of these soft gloves fell in the dark in his room. And then HPB sent the other one to him by mail so he could compare the two and verify for himself. Didn't seem to make any impression on him. He just, I don't know. There's no indication as to whether his father's eyes were helped, but at least he was given proof that these Mahatmas had power and that HPB was their agent. So let's continue with this. And now he's going back to the problems with Mrs. Billing and this other medium, Mrs. Simpson, who had a feud going on, and Mr. Massey couldn't determine which one of them was telling the truth and which one was not.
His, you see, is one more example of the ease with which even a superior intellect may deceive itself in occult matters by the maya of its own creation. And as regards the other case, please note that I am no barrister and therefore speak under reserve as an advocate for the accused.
Yeah, he's not a criminal defense attorney, so take that into account.
Mr. Massey, even to this day, isn't sure that Dr. Billing did not intercept the Simpson letter to his wife, keep it to use against her at a useful time, and actually use it thus in this instance. Has your observant friend realized that, at the time, there was a womanly medium's spite concerning their respective claims to the favors shown by ski, that Mrs. Billing called the ski of her friend, Mrs. Simpson, a bogus spook, that Dr. Billing complained bitterly to Alcott and HPB of the fraud perpetrated by Simpson's group, who tried to palm off a false ski as the genuine one, the oldest as well as the most faithful control of his wife? The row even got into the papers.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Once again, Mr. Massey is kind of clueless when it comes to occult matters and can't sort things out because he has no discernment. we're not going to delve any more into that because we don't have all of the details. But the fact is that he didn't trust Mrs. Billing, and he also didn't trust HPB, the two people that he really should have had more confidence in if he wanted to make any progress. The Mahatmas have done so much to try to help him, and HPB also, she loved him dearly and really wanted him to succeed in his quest to become a Chela. But he's putting up all of these barriers that prevent that from happening.
I repeat that I speak under reserve. I have never looked into the accusation seriously, and only know of it by having caught a glimpse of the situation in Alcott's head when reading Mr. C.C. Massey's letter.
And that's how he learns a lot of stuff.
But this I do know. The long and short of the matter is that your friend quickly suspected and unjustly condemned the innocent and has done himself harm spiritually.
Yeah. When you make false judgments about people and follow up on that by sharing your false judgments with other people, you're creating karma. Better to keep your concerns to yourself until you know for 100% certainty that you are correct.
He really has no right to accuse HPB of deliberate deceit. I protest most emphatically against the woman being dealt with so uncharitably. She had no intention to deceive, unless withholding a fact is deceit and a lie. But then, on this theory, we all, brothers and chelas, ought to be regarded as liars.
They have a different code of ethics and propriety than English society does. In English society, it's all about appearing proper. It's 100% appearances. What you do in your private life is up to you and should have nothing to bear on your reputation in public. But the Mahatmas don't see it that way.
I mean, we don't see it that way either. She was ordered to see that the letter was delivered. She had no other means of doing so at that time except through ski. She had no power of sending it direct like the glove was, and Moria wouldn't help her for certain reasons of his own, and very valid ones too, as I have found out recently. She knew Mr. Massey distrusted ski and was foolish enough to believe that Mr. Massey separated the medium from the spirit, as proved by her letter.
So he had an agenda. He didn't like dealing with ski, which was Mrs. Billings' spirit guide.
Native American, right? Wasn't he like an American Indian?
And may have been an adept. Mm-hmm. But this Mrs. Simpson was using another spirit guide who claimed to be ski, but wasn't the same one. Mr. Massey couldn't figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Just one thing, he mentions the glove here. How would we know what he would be talking about if we hadn't done the research on that incident with the glove? It's not described in the letter,
no,
right?
But on the theosophy.wiki website, they have a little article about that. So that's where I found that.
And again, this is one more reason why this is so cool, because if you just read the book, you wouldn't know what he's talking about.
No, you would have no clue. No. And this is all due to so many other theosophical researchers over the past 100 years that have tried to put together all the pieces. So we have a treasure trove of resources that we can consult.
It's
today.
Fascinating. If you just read the book, you would read that and say, what is he talking about? You would have no idea.
And between the script that we are creating that is far more legible and understandable than the original book, plus all of these other resources, there's no reason for people not to be studying these with a greater intensity now.
And the comprehension, yeah. Out of pure unselfish devotion for him, she was anxious for him to see that he was noticed at last by a real brother. Hence, she tried to conceal the fact that Ski had a hand in it. Moreover, an hour after having sent her letter to Mrs. Billing to be delivered by Ski, a letter read at the time and not found accidentally as alleged, she forgot about it.
Now, this is important because HPB is quite often the agent for making things happen on behalf of the Mahatmas. But when she does, she often is privy to very private information. She does her job and then almost immediately forgets anything about it. And then other people will say, well, but you did this and you did that. And she's like, I don't remember. I did my job, and then I go on about my own work. So they were expecting that she was 100% involved in every aspect of that particular event, when in fact she did a small service and then didn't keep in her mind what it was that she was involved with. And they couldn't understand that. So once again, they don't understand at all how Mahatmas and their accepted Chelas operate.
No idea, no thought of the slightest deceit on her part had ever crossed her mind. Had Mr. Massey asked her to tell him the truth, after the letter had been shown to him, she probably would have either sent him to a very hot place and said nothing, or honestly confessed the truth. A very hot place.
And she would have, too.
She simply thought it best that the intended good effect of the brother's message should not be canceled by arousing a hostile emotion in Mr. C.C. Massey's mind, the fruit of such unwarranted suspicion.
So all of her tiptoeing around Mr. Massey's preoccupations and presuppositions were to no avail. Trying to accommodate his ideas that were incorrect didn't help anything.
We, my dear sirs, always judge men by their motives and the moral effects of their actions. For the world's false standards and prejudice, we have no respect. K.H.
Once again, he said that so many times. They say things the way they are. They don't try to make them prettier. They don't kowtow to people's prejudices. They just say it. And the British people don't think that's appropriate. Of course, you try to protect people's feelings. That's just common sense. It has everything to do with ego. We want to protect our egos. They want to protect their egos. So we dance very carefully so as not to antagonize anyone. Not the ones that matter. Anyone else, that's fair game. But those of us who are the same status that we are, we try to protect each other.
And it's a game.
It is a game, and the Mahatmas want nothing to do with it. That's the end of letter number 112. Letter number 113 continues in the same vein with additional information about the current situation with the Phoenix newspaper, and it's quite involved. There is more than one bill in Parliament that is affecting this whole situation. So let me just give you a little bit of background. One of the things that they will be talking about, that KH will be mentioning in letter number 113 in our next session, pertains to what is called the Permanent Settlement of 1793. And that was something that was proposed by Charles Cornwallis. He was a general in the British Army during the American Revolution. And once that war was over and America had seceded, he was appointed Governor General of British India. So basically the Viceroy on behalf of the king, whoever the king was in 1793. And he introduced this bill, the Bengal Permanent Settlement, which was supposed to fix all of the land revenue with regard to the Zamindars or Zamindars. Now, we've talked about Zamindars before. They were the landlords. But as we will learn in our next session, They weren't originally landlords. Instead, they were only tax collectors on behalf of the Mughal Empire. And the Mughal Empire existed from 526 AD to 1857 AD. 1857 was the period when the Sepoy Mutiny took place, and 150,000 people or so were killed.
Oh, gosh.
So, yeah, that was a major development, but that was after the time of Cornwallis, obviously. But he's the one that partly created this discrepancy. So the Zamindars were tax collectors. But when the British came in, they didn't understand that. And the Zamindars realized that they didn't understand it, so they convinced them that they were landowners. And here's the problem. They didn't work the land themselves, obviously. They weren't out there laboring. They were collecting from the ryots. It's sometimes spelled R-Y-O-T, but then later it was corrected to R-A-I-Y-A-T, which is more according to transliteration today. Ryots were the workers. They were basically sharecroppers. So despite who owned the land, most likely the Rajas, the equivalent of Rajas in the Mughal Empire, the ryots were the ones who were actually working the land. But the Zamindars convinced the British that they owned it. And so the British went along with it. And that created a huge discrepancy. So the ryots got taken advantage of. They were being charged exorbitant prices. And the Mahatmas were not at all happy. So they had the opportunity in this newspaper to help try to solve some of that situation.
Wow.
So apparently it wasn't the karma of the riots that they should be mistreated that way. And so they felt entitled, the Mahatmas did, to try to help them regain their rights. Very complicated situation. Sinnett absolutely does not understand it, and none of the British people do, but the Mahatmas do understand it. A lot of background information. So in our next session, we're going to go into that, and buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Oh, jeez.
All right.
All right.
What do you think?
Cool. Let's keep going. There's always something.
Always something exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, stay tuned. Next session is 75, another major milestone. So thank you for following. We appreciate every view and your comments, and hope that you're sharing the knowledge you're gaining with the people around you. And happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Namaste.
All right.